Hello, this is Vedic Ghost, and this video is going to be about hypermasculinity and the side effects of hypermasculinity. I've been talking about this for a while now, and this has been a new topic for a lot of people, and I've been talking about this since the last video about hypermasculinity and how it actually presents itself, and now I'm going to talk about the side effects of it. And the funny thing about it is I've always laughed about it, and I've always joked about it, and I've always joked with it. But typically, you don't really get to see it until in its full effect, unless you see it in somebody's stream. Good example of streams that you'll see hypermasculinity in. Before I say that, typically hypermasculinity is a type of masculine frame that is basically toxic masculinity. It's the toxic masculinity that everybody speaks of that they don't know it actually exists. This is the toxic masculinity. This is typically where somebody is raised by a single mother, a boy is raised by a single mother, or a man acts as such or portrays himself as such at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, what ends up happening when hypermasculinity is men typically end up acting out or, acting with, trying to be masculine while being emotional, while being it's basically a mixture of testosterone and estrogen at the same damn time running through their damn system at the same time. It's typically how it works. The irony to it is what a lot of people don't realize, or what a lot of people don't know about it, is a lot of men actually suffer from this in this day and age, especially men who were raised to be soft, men who were raised by single mothers, men who were raised in the gynocentric world or society, basically all suffer from this. Not all of them, but a good majority of them do. So basically, it's toxic masculinity masquerading as hypermasculinity. The sad part about that, I've actually named a couple names in the last stream about who actually suffers from hypermasculinity, and it's basically toxic masculinity. I said alpha male strategies pretty much suffers from it. You also have, if you actually watch the Money AD streams, Saturday Night Shenanigans, you'll see a lot of that in that stream. No Sweetheart streams, especially the most recent stream, aka Past the $40, basically. He has a lot of that in this stream too. Other people who suffer from it is Seafood Black Irish, stuff like that for all intents and purposes. It's where and the neat thing about toxic masculinity is it's not even a fact that how they go about it. It's more or less the fact that the premise behind why they do it for all intents and purposes. Good example is men who typically try to make themselves seem cooler than what they really are, or more than what they really are. Like case in point, people who act like they're gangster on the internet when they're really not gangster in real life, or people who say they know certain people who they really don't know, or people who typically do shit like that for all intents and purposes. And it's always been one of those things where they gotta beat their chest so they can sound bigger than what they really are, or beat their chest so they can sound cooler than what they really are. Another form of toxic hypermasculinity is men who listen to pop culture or rap culture. When they get mad at somebody, they go, "I don't really care. I'm living in mansions with big swimming pools and this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other." That's hypermasculinity, basically. Your fifis got hurt, so therefore now you gotta blow your ego up to big proportions to basically make yourself sound cooler than what you really are. Another form of that is when the person yells on a video, talk about, "I'm an alpha." You're typically not an alpha. Things like that. Or, when people get in their fifis and they basically have to down other YouTubers because they're in their fifis, basically. It's typically a form of hypermasculinity, which is toxic masculinity, which is basically real masculinity. Is basically masculinity. It's basically femininity mixed with masculinity, masquerading as a masculine frame, basically. This is typically where that whole entire masculine frame comes from, or maintained frame comes from. It's basically comes from being hyper masculine. The sad part about that is a lot of these people who say maintain frame can't maintain frame they can't even maintain an actual mainframe. or let alone the actual frame of a house, let alone, maintaining their own damn frame. They're about as like, their frame is about as like strong as cartilage, basically. And that's typically all they really are. They basically try to portray themselves, or they're more so the fake it till they make it type people, basically. You got to fake it till you make it, or you got to have this false courage, or you got to have this false confidence and this false bravado to make yourself feel better about yourself. That's basically all side effects of actually having hypermasculinity. And it's not the greatest masculinity to have, because we all know that you're raised by a single mother, or we all know that you fall into the pop culture thing and you follow pop culture, and that's basically all you really do. And it's basically you regurgitate the same shit over and over again. A lot of these men regurgitate the same shit over and over again, and they basically sound like stands, basically. They're basically carbon copies of each other. They try to sound cooler than the other person, but at the end of the day, they pretty much sound just like the other person at the end of the day. And it's sad. It's sad to watch when people actually go through that. And it's sad to watch people literally living that life, or, getting, called out for it for all intents and purposes. Because the sad part about it is it's one of those things where it's very, very sad to watch somebody go through hypermasculinity and the side effects of hypermasculinity. Because typically what ends up happening is these motherfuckers are very emotional and their feelings get hurt very easily. So when they respond, they're responding from an emotional state. They're not responding from a logical state. They're responding from an emotional state. Another case in point from that is typically, what's up, Shinobi One? What's up, Real Pill in the Wind? Another thing that I've noticed with a lot of these guys is they'll typically, act out or act tough or pretend like they're a part of something they're not. Or they'll act as if they're tougher or stronger, or they know some known gangster that's for all intents and purposes. Or they'll act like they're gangster, or act like they're street, or act like they're basically internet cowboys for all intents and purposes. They act tough. They pretend to be tough, but they're really not all that tough. I typically call those people out because they're like, well, if you was in my neighborhood, this, that, and the other, then I'll drop an address of where I'm at, and I happen to be close by to them. And you ain't there, nigga. You ain't there, like, nigga. Then I'll take a selfie of myself and send it to them or email them. And they'd be like, and I'll be right there in the diner, basically, that they claim I wasn't in and shit. Then them niggas be like trying to get all quiet, and, their chest, all the air in their chest just inflates, basically. Because it's typically how I roll. Like, if you're going to be acting gangster on the internet, I'm going to need you to be gangster in real life. I'm going to need you to keep the same energy you had on the internet. I'm going to need you to keep it in real life. That's typically why I say, if you got a problem with me, I'll drop my address and you can come out and get drugged, basically, because I'm literally about that life. Whereas all these other people, they be like, yeah, I'll do this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other. No, you're not. Nigga, you scared of being like, docs, nigga. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. You ain't finna do shit. You ain't about that life. And that's typically how you deal with a lot of those motherfuckers. They always talk the most shit, but when they're faced with actually having to deal with you or see a nigga in person, they typically back down very quickly. They typically ain't as tough as they really are. I've seen a lot of niggas that talk shit on the internet, and I see them in person. They'll walk the other way, cross the street from me, or they'll act like, they ain't say some slick shit to me, and they'll act like they know me and say, what's up, my nigga, this, that, and the other. That's typically how all these niggas act, basically. That's pretty much how they all act. And it's like the funniest shit in the whole entire world to watch. And this is how you know they suffer from hypermasculinity, because they fifis got hurt and they want to act bigger than they really are. They want to act tougher than they really are. Because I tell them, nigga, in a heartbeat, I'll drop my address. You can come out and see me. Now, I'm not guaranteeing you actually get to see me because there's some niggas with guns outside my house, but, it is what it is. You might get a chance to see me if you're big and bad, basically. If you're as bad as you claim to be, you can basically come see me. You're a trip, Shinobi One. But yeah, I typically always laugh at people who do that, or laugh at people who always say stupid shit like that to me, because I know they're the type of niggas that can't even hold water. They can't even hold water weight, let alone water in their mouths, basically. They wouldn't even bust a grape in a fruit fight. Let's just put it that way. And they talk the most shit. And it's like the funniest shit in the world to watch them talk. And it's sad to watch them talk this shit, because you know they're coming from a place of disadvantage, like I always say. Typically, people who suffer from hypermasculinity, they come from a place of disadvantage when it comes to you. So it's one of those things where you just have to laugh at them and point, basically. It's kind of like people who always try to poke fun at me or try to troll me, basically. And here's how you know when a person's losing. When I don't even go and look at their channel, but I already know what they're going to say and already got a video loaded for them. The sad part about that is all their followers will come over and watch my channel because they know that I'm going to say some shit, basically. But nobody in my camp goes over and watches their channels at all, basically. That's simply how that works. The point of, like, if you're going to try to troll somebody or fuck with somebody, the point is trying to get that person to actually come watch your shit. The sad part about that is I don't even try. Motherfuckers come over to see what I'm going to say, and I typically can tell when I hit somebody's nerve because my numbers go up because I talk shit on somebody, basically. It is what it is. That's typically when I know I struck a nerve, basically, and they're waiting on my every word so I can actually make a comeback or say something about that person who they love and follow and cherish, basically. It's pretty much how it works. So I basically know that, that person's coming from a place of disadvantage because they can't even get me to come look at their damn channel, let alone they can't even get my children to come look at their channel. So it's one of those things where it's like they're coming from a place of disadvantage. It's kind of like what people say when they try to, like, make false claims against you. Kind of like, the Let's Talk Facts Sifu, when they don't do their due diligence to actually go investigate shit and they go off of some bullshit or he say she said shit, and they end up always, putting their foot in their mouths. It's typically one of those things. And the sad part about that is, like, the people who don't do their due diligence, they basically run on emotion, just like women. The people who get offended by questions typically run on emotion. They run on straight emotion, basically, when it comes to it. Now, I am one of them people. If you ask me a dumb question, there is such thing when it comes to me. There is a such thing as a dumb question, basically. So if you ask me a dumb question, or if you ask me the same thing over and over again, I will get agitated with somebody and I will cut them off, basically. Or if you keep on repeating the same thing over and over again in the stream, I will cut you off and get angry. But the sad part about that is I typically like my streams to flow. So if my stream's not flowing, then I basically got to, go, nuke mode on your ass, basically. And that's totally different for the fact that when I typically get mad or angry, it's basically because you're disrupting the flow of the stream, or you're being a dumbass, basically, or you're basically preaching something that is not on my platform, or you're basically, saying dumb shit or asking a stupid question or asking me the same question over and over again, or you're trying to rehash the same topic that I typically don't like to rehash over and over again because I typically like my channel to have a different topic for a video. Now, I ain't got no problem rehashing a topic if it happens to come up with a new topic. Like, if it happens to be a topic within a new topic that we're talking about, I ain't got no problem with rehashing it and revisiting it. But if you're going to just bring up an old topic from an old video, I typically don't do that in my videos. So I try to come up with a new topic or a new, approach, and people typically would try to fuck it up. But, well, remember you said this in this video? Yeah, that was that video. This is a new video. Catch up. And that's simply how I am. And I do believe there's a such thing as dumb questions. When it comes to being in a stream, there is a such thing as dumb question. Moving right along, you'll typically see all these people doing this when they react to you, or they don't do their due diligence. They don't do their due diligence to investigate, and they just throw your name out there. Those are typically people who suffer from hypermasculinity. Or you'll get people who will try to act tougher than they really are, or act bigger than what they really are, or act badder than what they really are, and they suffer from hypermasculinity. Like beating on your chest and trying to, proclaim that you're an alpha. Or, beating on your chest and trying to proclaim that you know gangsters that you really don't even know. Or you're related to gangsters that you really don't know. And it's one of those things where I'll always laugh at people because I never said I'm related to gangsters. I've always said that my family is pretty much coyotes. They're not gangsters, just as coyotes. And I happen to be dating somebody whose father is a gangster, basically. So it's like, no, I don't claim to be a gangster, nor do I claim to be related to gangsters. I basically am a gangster myself at the end of the day. I basically lived a life. I basically, like I said, I'm an honest criminal at the end of the day. It don't matter what I'm doing in the streets. I'm an honest criminal at the end of the day. Whether you like me or not, I'm always going to be bluntly honest about my shit. And if you don't like it, it's just too bad, basically. Facts, Shinobi One. Don't interrupt the progress of the stream. It needs to flow like water, basically. But typically, a lot of times when shit happens, I've noticed that people would get upset with me or they would get in their feelings. Like a good example of that is somebody that recently suffered from hypermasculinity, MAGA man, because I wouldn't let them in an exclusively closed stream known as Bleeding Edge Red Pill. It typically has this cast already. We might invite some people who actually have like knowledge of the topic, but we just don't invite anybody. You basically got to be a person of choice, basically, or a person that, was voted on or chosen to actually be a part of the stream. Now, we have had people in the stream that, acted a straight fool, but it's typically one of those things where it's like, yep, never doing that again, Sifu. As far as like Bleeding Edge is concerned, because, people can't follow simple rules, basically. And that's another side effect of suffering from hypermasculinity. People who can't follow simple rules. MGTOW Dictionary is another example of that. He couldn't follow the simple rules in a stream, so he got mad and he wanted to go on a tirade and try to rail against me, basically, all because he can't follow simple rules. He suffers from hypermasculinity too. And if you actually see him, I don't understand how he suffers from hypermasculinity. I guess it's a Napoleon complex, I guess. It is what it is. But, you got to make yourself sound cooler and bigger than what you really are, basically, because you basically want to fit in with the people around you at the end of the day. My favorite moment of his where I knew he was suffering from hypermasculinity is when he said that somebody in his stream took molecular genetics or as molecular genetics. Now, if you know anything about molecular genetics or anybody in the manosphere that's in molecular genetics, you would know that I'm actually in molecular genetics. Now, the thing about it is you knew shit was being borrowed. You knew that person didn't know anything about it. The sad part about that, the thing that I love about that stream was Bulldog Mindset. He actually admitted to not know anything about molecular genetics, but he basically made the person who claimed that they know everything about molecular genetics look stupid. He literally didn't know anything about it, but he made the person who claimed they did look dumb as fuck, basically. He brought up some valid points. He did talk on some molecular genetics, and he knew of some, but he didn't know completely, and he actually admitted to it, but he actually literally made the person who claimed they did look like a dumbass. It was like the funniest shit in the whole entire world. He literally made him look like a dumbass. And that was like the funniest part. And that was like the highlight of the stream for me when a person pretended like he knew molecular genetics because, he basically had to he basically had to cut and paste me and put it on somebody else to make them seem cooler than what they really are. That sadly, it is what it is. People do it all the time. I can't help it. I'm just a copy. I'm a copy and paste kind of person. It's kind of like that one meme. Don't mind me. I'm copying your style, Tico. I know it's okay. I got you. Flattery. And that's basically what a lot of people do. And it's like, and people always try to get mad at other people for doing it when they do it. And it's like, dude, it's the easiest template in the world. Yeah, I'm basically going to explain it to you best. Don't lie about other motherfuckers and tell the truth. How can you be mad at following that template? Don't lie about other motherfuckers and tell the truth about yourself. Don't lie about yourself and make yourself sound cooler than what you really are and tell the truth about other people, basically. That's pretty much what the Tico template is. And if somebody takes it and runs with it, I'm not even mad about it. You basically just ran with it. But people take the wrong things from it and try to, cut and paste my education and put it on somebody else who don't have it or don't have the knowledge of it. Or they'll cut and paste somebody else and say, well, he's a psychologist. And a person would try to repeat some of the same shit that I said in the stream. And it's like the funniest shit in the world because they're stumbling over their words, trying to repeat word for word the shit that I said. Or my favorite is my favorite thing is when people say like people will say like they have somebody over here that's this, that, and the other, or this person's in a cartel. Meanwhile, there's some Indian guy who knows nothing about the cartel. And it's like the funniest shit in the world when people like try to copy me, basically copy and paste me on a regular basis. It's like the funniest shit in the world. A dumb question, an example of a dumb question would be that stream where I talked about like datecations, basically, where the person was asking me the same question over and over again. Is a good example of a dumb question. If I answer the question, why are you asking me the same question again? Are you listening to me or are you just running your mouth? Basically, And it's one of those things where like, that's a dumb question. Another example of a dumb question is if you're going to ask me that like, well, Tico, if you're going to ask me like a dumb question, like, like, why do I do this when in fact I don't do shit, basically. Basically, if you ask me a question that's not true, or you try to pin a subject on me that's not even true, it's a dumb question. Well, why do you do this? It's a dumb question. You literally said something that wasn't true. You literally asked me a question about me that wasn't true. So that's a dumb question to me. Another example of a dumb question is if somebody asks you a question that has nothing to do with the actual stream. It's irrelevant to the actual stream. That's a dumb question too, in my eyes. But what's up, Birmingham? But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where like you have to basically understand the people around you and when they're acting the way that they do. Like a good example of a person actually keeping their calm and actually keeping a good head, which really impressed me, was Lonely Underscore and Money AD's stream. He asked a simple question, and everybody got triggered and started spurging out in the fucking stream. Basically, he asked a simple question. Now, don't get me wrong. Lonely Underscore will gaslight people, but particularly that moment in time, he wasn't gaslighting people. He particularly does gaslight people on a regular basis. And the sad part about that is you can usually tell the difference when he's actually gaslighting you and when he's asking a simple question. The sad part about that, the people on the stream think he's gaslighting them when he's asking a simple question, which is very sad. Like, I've literally seen him ask simple questions and people go to hell off, basically. For no reason. Then I've seen him actually gaslight people, and like people are like answering questions, and he's sitting there gaslighting them and laughing and saying how stupid that was, and he's sitting there gaslighting them some more, basically. And it's the funniest shit in the world to watch. It is really the funniest shit in the world to watch. Yeah, and the sad part about that, I will have to give, like I always say, I do give props where props is due. Lonely Underscore did handle himself very well in that last shenanigans. Along with Bulldog Mindset, he handled himself very well in that MGTOW dictionary stream, where he basically made somebody that was supposed to be a molecular genetics look like a dumbass, basically. So I will give him props where props is due too, along with a few other people that I can't really name right now that basically handled. Oh, TFM in a Black Pill stream literally manhandled everybody in this damn stream by himself. I have to give him props where props is due. Like he really needs it, basically. He's like. Like, Tico, come on now, nigga. I already know. That's pretty much TFM right there. You're like, nigga, come on now. You don't got to give me props. I already know, nigga. You already know. It was like TFM was playing, get him, Jeezy, I got him. Get him, Jeezy, I got him. In the background, basically, while he's answering the questions and, shooting people down at the same time. It's pretty funny. But, like, you get people like that can basically handle a crowd basically like that. Or, control a crowd control for all intents and purposes. But it's funny when it happens. And it's funny to watch. Because I always say to people, when people are coming at you, they're coming at you from a place of disadvantage, especially when they're coming at you emotionally. Out of nowhere, they're coming at you from a place of disadvantage, which is another side effect of hypermasculinity. Somebody out of nowhere, you happen to offend them. Now they're just coming at you upset and mad, basically out of nowhere. They're suffering from hypermasculinity. A person who says something stupid like, Nas X is a better rapper than Nas, which is a stupid idea, the dumbest idea in the whole entire world. Because the reason why he's a better rapper, because he's more positive. The sad part about positivity is what got everybody in the trouble that they're in now. Realistic and real life is what keeps people out of fucking trouble. Positivity is what keeps people in trouble blindly, basically, because they believe something wholeheartedly blindly that they'll walk right into stupid shit, basically. It's kind of like that unicorns and rainbows trope, basically. Being positive in raps is basically unicorns and rainbows trope. Nas is actually more realistic when it comes to what's going on in life. People don't like real life, so they typically like, fake life and like to basically project a fake life, basically. This is also This is also a sign of not toxic masculinity, well, toxic masculinity known as hypermasculinity. And it's sad to watch people go through it. It really is. And a lot of people would say something like, a good example would be, what's that kid's name? I forget that damn kid's name that rolls with Money AD and rolls with Hidden, basically. But that 16, 17-year-old kid that rolls with them. He's a prime example of hypermasculinity or toxic masculinity. He basically says a lot of dumb shit to make it sound good. Good example of that is he said, and when I was asking him a question, well, I'm too good for women. No, actually, no. What that actually sounds like to me is you're too scared to talk to women. You're not even shooting your shot, Junior. So I'm gonna need you to go sit your ass down. It's basically all it really is. And the sad part about that is any man that can sit up here and say they're too good for women and say it with such confidence and say it with such bravado, they ain't shit and they ain't getting women and they would never get women at the end of the day. They basically pretend to get women. And if they pretend like they're too good for women, they're basically not getting anything or not getting pussy or not getting anything from a woman. They're barely getting the time of day from women. If they get anything from women, there's probably a text basically letting them know they're friend zone. It's pretty much men who actually claim they're better than women, basically, or act like they're better than women, or claim that, ain't no woman good enough for me, basically. Typically, nobody in the manosphere really says that shit, basically. They typically would say, well, if women act right, or women do this, or women do that, that's what they typically say. Whereas men outside the manosphere who hate on the manosphere, they'll say stupid shit like, I'm too good for women. Women can't, women, I'm better than women, I'm better than this, I'm better than that, I'm this, that, and the other, basically. That's hypermasculinity, aka toxic masculinity, speaking, basically. And most times it's just estrogen kicking in for all intents and purposes, sadly. Other good examples of that is when the emo black pillar spurg out in your comment section or spurg out in the stream, and they basically all go in unison and they try to shut you up or silence you, basically, or kick you out of stream. That's typically how that works. Another good example of that is, somebody who has to take shots at somebody because their bottom line's being affected. Or a man that has to threaten to sue people on a stream, Darius M. Threaten people on a stream for using their content because it affects his bottom line. That's some serious hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity right there too. And the list just goes on and on and on, basically. All the men in the 21 convention basically suffer from hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity. I don't care who you are. If you were a part of it, you pretty much suffer from it. Yeah. Another good example of somebody who suffers from it is everybody knows Hammerhand made a video on it and made a video about him. He suffers from, hypermasculinity too. This nigga's about like 5 foot nothing. And he suffers from hypermasculinity with a bald head and a gray ass beard, basically. And everybody loves him dearly, but he suffers from hypermasculinity. He acts tougher than what he really is, but he's really not all that tough. He's actually a big bitch, basically. Or shall I rephrase that? He's actually a small bitch, basically. The type of small bitch that'll fit in your pocket. Who basically gotta, make videos about his lifestyle and where he lives and shit like that. And in the intros of his videos, basically. It's just simple shit like that actually exudes hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity. When you got to show off all the damn time, which is a female trait. Anytime you got to show off to the world, you basically suffer from toxic masculinity or hypermasculinity, basically. It's just things like that. I'm trying to think of other good examples of people suffering from hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity. People who are spoiled brats are another group of people who suffer from hypermasculinity or toxic masculinity. They try to act tougher or cooler than what they really are. And they're basically insignificant at the end of the day. Or they'll basically use things like, I got my subs and I got more subs than you. It's typically somebody coming from a place of disadvantage, basically, because that's all they got and that's all they are and that's all they'll ever be. They're basically getting a lot of attention from a lot of people, and that's basically a female trait, basically. When they actually, anytime a person can say that to you, like, well, my subs and this, I got more subs than you and shit like that, They're basically suffering from hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity. Another good example of people who suffer from that will be people who will lie about the girls that they get or how many girls they get. Another good example of people who suffer from that are the men who will white knight or simp for other women, basically. They swear up and down that they're not a white knight or simp. Just shit along the lines of that. Oh, or yeah, Baron Yam just came on one, or the show your face people, or the quote unquote show receipts people too. They basically suffer from hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity, which is a female trait, basically. Show your face. Cam up, bro, cam up. That's basically some bitch thing, basically. Also, show your receipts, that's also bitch thing. So anybody that you hear somebody say show your receipts, that's basically bitch thing for all intents and purposes. Only time I say show the receipts is when I'm picking on that person in the stream, and trolley trolls are picking on that person in the stream. That's typically when you know I'm fucking with somebody, is when I fuck with them and pick on them. Show receipts is the funniest shit in the world. And that's basically a female trait. And cam up or show your face is basically a bitch trait too. Because basically all that is basically they want to basically prove that they're better to you or prove that they look better to you or see what you look like so they can talk shit about you, basically. All it really is. Anybody that falls for that shit suffers from hypermasculinity or toxic masculinity at the end of the day. So if you fall in the trap of that shit, it's like the funniest shit in the world, basically. Just don't do it. Just say no and keep it moving. So at the end of the day, these are all different types of things that you can do that are, hypermasculinity or toxic masculinity. Anytime somebody tells you to maintain frame, they're suffering from hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity. Anytime somebody tells you that how many girls you get or how many girls you bed is a good thing, is suffer from bitch thing and hypermasculinity, sadly, and toxic masculinity. It is what it is, whether you like it or not. But that's the show for now. This is Vedic Ghosts. Like, subscribe, and share. Be blessed and have a good one. Have to get going because I have a pre-engagement to get to, and I have a talk to actually get to, basically. Y'all be good to yourselves, treat yourselves like milk, do nothing but spoil yourselves, and always be a better version of yourselves. Always grow and always make yourself a better version of yourself every day. Every single second, every single minute, every single day, every single moment, every single week, every single month. Make yourself a better version of yourself. And that goes for anybody. Black, white, Chinese, Puerto Rican, Asian, female, guy, trans, Apache helicopter, T-Rex, whatever the hell you want to be, whatever the hell you want to claim yourself to be, just do better with yourself and do better by yourself, basically. What I mean by do better by yourself is do better for yourself, basically. And do right by yourself, basically. But y'all have a blessed one, have a good one, be blessed, and have a good day. And I'm happy to serve the manosphere. This is Vedic Ghosts, and I'm out. Here goes some outros.